Hi everyone, welcome to TSAM Digital. My name's Amy and today I'm joined by Janine Hofer-Wittwer, who is Senior Product Manager at Six. So welcome Janine, it's great to have you.
Hi, Amy. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's lovely to have you back because of course you were just at the Summit for Asset Management the other week. So we're having you here to talk about ESG and what Six does. So would you mind just giving a short introduction to yourself and telling us a little bit about Six?
Yes, sure. Happy to do that. So yeah, at Six Financial Information, which is the business unit of the Six Group, I'm responsible for developing ESG data services. My background is actually in risk management. So from risk management, I got into ESG several years back. Of course, ESG is not only about risk, but also opportunities and more also impact. And what do we do as Six in ESG? We're a very strong provider of regulatory data. So that's also what we've been focusing on in the last few years in terms of ESG. So we've worked heavily on all the developments that are going on in the EU with SFDR and taxonomy, changes to MiFID, and so on. So we've created many different data sets that we can now distribute to our clients. And we also act as an aggregator and redistributor of data. So what that means is we work with well-known third-party providers and we collect the data, we normalize it, we put it in certain standards, frameworks, and then distribute that data to our clients, which makes it much easier for them to integrate this type of data rather than having to connect to yet another provider that can actually receive the ESG data mapped to financial instruments, mapped to companies through the existing delivery capabilities. So that's in essence, in short, what we do in ESG.
Fantastic. And yeah, just to take a step back then, because you mentioned all those regulatory challenges, could you tell us a little bit more about those and what the implications are for the data? Because I know, like you say, there's so much to manage right now.
Yeah, there is there is a lot. Yes, I mean the EU went ahead with all these ESG regulatory requirements, the whole EU action plan on sustainable finance with what I mentioned, the sustainable finance disclosure regulation that applies to financial institutions, but then also the whole taxonomy, EU taxonomy, which is really kind of trying to define what is green. So parts of this have been implemented that will apply or is applying to financial institutions, but also to corporates under the non-financial reporting directive. And then we've had changes to MiFID II, where now also sustainability needs to be considered under a suitability assessment. So clients have to be asked if they're interested in sustainable investments, and if they confirm that, they can only be offered products that then fit that requirement. So, there is a lot going on. We also have regulations on the company side, like the NFRD that I mentioned, but also the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. That's not out yet, but in the making. So there is a lot going on, and there is also a lot of confusion in the markets. I mean, under SFDR, many of our clients, they don't know exactly what to do. So they are working on all these implementations, but there is a lot of confusion. You also have then the national bodies, that may come up with their slightly adjusted requirements. So it's not one EU wide standard, or it's an EU wide regulation, but with certain national differences. So yeah, all in all, very complex, very confusing, still in the making. And the data is really essential. It's essential to all that, but it's also a challenge because also many clients want really data that's disclosed by the companies, so the investee companies. They don't necessarily want to rely on estimated data. But of course, a lot of this corporate data is not yet available, especially also since CSRD is not yet implemented or applicable. So, that's another challenge. So there is missing data points, comparability of data that's available. So, there is a lot of data out there, but not necessarily what the clients are looking for, or in the standards they're looking for. So that's one thing we're working on, and the whole industry is working on. And that's one of the big challenges, I think, that's out there.
Yeah, I know it will get easier once there is more data available, but in terms of navigating the gaps in the data, what can firms be doing to sort of source it better, have more accurate data, more relevant data, as you say, and also have enough data to satisfy all of these different regional standards, as you say, that all have different requirements? What can they be doing now with what they've got?
I mean, at the moment, it's really kind of necessary to get data from different sources. And I don't, necessarily mean in terms of delivery, but really at the end, the source. So, for example, there is company data out there. Us as SIX, for example, we collect, as I said, data from different providers like Sustainalytics, MSCI, and so on. They cover slightly different universes. So, that helps you to then cover a bigger universe of companies if you rely on different providers. And then also what we also have now, what's coming is the data that is sourced directly from the asset managers. So as the asset managers now start to make disclosures on their sustainable funds, and by the way, also the structured products providers started to make disclosures, even though they don't have to. But again, under that MiFID requirement, they see it as a advantage if they actually make ESG disclosures, just to still be in that investable universe for wealth managers. And that data, it's coming now as well. Coverage is rapidly increasing on that. So it's really about kind of, bringing all these different sources together. And that's really, and then looking at, different data points and so on. And in the end, it's down to the financial institutions really to decide, how they want to build their sustainable products, what exactly the criteria are they want to look at, what kind of funds, for example, they want to offer, if there are Article 8, Article 9, because that's not clearly defined. So it's again down to them to define, if they have Article 9 funds, how exactly do they do it? What criteria do they look at? And then it's really about being transparent and reporting or disclosing on that to really explain to the market what they're doing, how they're performing as well. That's coming from next year. So yeah, there is a lot of options in this as well, which I think is good. But it's really about transparency. And I think what's also another point is really that, clients are very different from each other. There is not, we can say, well, many are confused by regulations and so on, but we also see very big differences between, maybe clients who have been in this, in ESG investing for a long time. Some started, 10 or more years ago. They may have huge teams, they may have a lot of know-how. They're usually sourcing really big data sets. They're interested in underlying data points, in raw data, and then they analyze all this and come to their own conclusions. And at the other end of the spectrum, you have, maybe wealth managers, for example, that are quite new to this whole ESG investing. Maybe also due to the regulations, they now realize, we have to do something and start looking into this. And of course, they're quite grateful if they can be given some guidance, if they can rely on certain ESG ratings, for example, to make these first decisions and that steer them in some kind of direction. So it's really, there is not one client and, one problem, but it's really a variety and very different strategies of coping with the problem or the challenge at hand.
Yeah, absolutely. And regardless of whether they're just starting out and they're compiling the ESG ratings data or whether they already have large data sets of their own, as you say, how can technology help them to put it all in one place and, as you say, turn it into those actionable insights and create transparency and sort of take the best out of the data? What can they be doing?
Yeah, there are also different ways, and technology is actually a good point. We did a study recently. It's called the Future of Finance study, where SIX surveyed roughly 300 C-level representatives from financial institutions around the world. And when asked what are the biggest gaps in the market, about 45% said that the lack of technology to assess regulatory data and help them with regulatory disclosures is a huge gap. So there is clearly a challenge there, and technology is one thing, to help them from the intake of the data management, but then also making investment decisions, monitoring portfolios, all the way through to disclosures and reporting to clients. So there we see tools developing or being offered that support that. That's certainly a big need. Also, another need, I think, is to make sense of regulations, because we're talking about hundreds of pages of text and they're being updated as we speak. So there is a lot of change going on. It takes a lot of effort to just keep up with what's happening, and that's not yet making sense of all this, and then translating this into data as well, and into processes, that is quite a challenge. So I see that the technology can support there.
Really interesting insight, yeah, from your survey there. I'm not surprised actually that that's one of the top challenges. From speaking with people in the industry, it seems to be a common hurdle. So based on that, then, closing thoughts. What is your focus for 2023 and beyond? What are you kind of looking to address next year?
Well, we certainly want to continue to focus on the regulations because, as I just mentioned before, all these developments that are still going on in the EU regulations. As an example, that I just received an email today that EET, which is the European ESG template, which fund managers and issuers of structured products use to disseminate their product disclosures. So again, on funds or structured products to the market. That EET that was issued, the first version was issued in June. Now in October already the version 1.1 was announced of this EET. And now I heard this morning that, whilst the EET version 1.1 is being integrated, there are already additional changes that relate to SFDR, RTS changes on, regarding to gas and nuclear energy. So, there are changes going on to changes. So you have to be really agile. So, and I think that's, again, also somewhere where we as a data provider can help, because we, of course, keep up with all this, make sure our data sets are up to date. So that's just one example of, we'll still be busy with the EU regulations next year. But on top of that, we have new ones coming in other parts of the world. We now see that, climate regulations on climate are, of course, a very big topic. I mean, now with COP27 as well going on these days, climate is a very big focus. Many countries are now issuing regulations with regards to climate. UK has, Switzerland, US, some Asian countries as well. Many of those rely on the TCFD framework. So that's definitely a very big focus of ours for next year as well. So, in short, continuing on the regulatory and frameworks path, helping our clients make sense of these regulations and the standards and relate that to data. That's another topic. So, also hopefully supporting them with tools that help on that. Another thing we're looking at, which I think is really exciting, is we're looking into green, social, sustainability-linked loans network or ecosystem. So that's one of our things that we're working on at the moment. And also continuing with that, making it easier to integrate this data for our clients. So really act as a data aggregator, as a normalizator, mapping that to a certain framework, and then helping our clients to source this data more easily rather than going to all these different providers separately and having to deal with different data formats, identifiers that are not unified, and so on. So really helping with the integration and making it easier to source this data.
Yeah, it sounds as if you've got a lot to keep you busy in such a fast-moving industry. So I'm sure even by the next time we speak, that a lot of those regulatory updates will have come out. You'll have to be integrating those into the data. There'll be new client needs that we haven't seen yet from the new updates and so forth. So I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. And I think it is probably because it's such a new space that it's changing so quickly, and maybe that will settle down in coming years. But for now, like you say, having to be agile seems to be the way to go. So I think this is where, as you say, SIX can come in and help investment professionals navigate this. So hopefully, obviously, we'll hear more from you at our future events and on our channel. But thanks so much for giving a bit of insight into that today, Janine.
It will certainly not be boring the next years to come. There will be a lot happening. But yeah, very exciting. And so I'm happy to be part of this space. And thanks a lot for the interview. And I look forward to being part of future events as well.
That's great. Well, thanks for joining, and thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you.